moment.
I think it's pretty scary if you think about the rate of advancement in the 25th century and how, like, for example, where AI will be.
Yeah.
I think it would look back and it would really think it'd be really cute, like how naive we are right now, because everything will be so optimized that the fact that we're even predicting the uncertainty, I think it would be interesting in a world a couple hundred years from now and how much more advanced it would be.
Yeah.
That's my immediate reaction as well, is I can't fathom what it will be like to be living a couple hundred years from now. I just think, and then my second reaction was
Brian will still be here, though.
Yeah, Brian. But I think, I think we'll look back on this conversation with like some parallel to looking back on like a pre-internet time, or like it's not possible to fathom what we as a species, an augmented species, are capable of. But I think I don't know, I reflected that maybe that's a limitation of my own mind to not be able to fully accept that right now. But yeah, hard to comprehend is where my head went.
I think I have to agree with you in terms of the limiting factor. Like, I feel like us as a species in general, we limit ourselves in what we think is possible and then say it can't be, but we are our own limiting factors, And I feel like we're gonna look back and be like, how did we think that that we couldn't achieve this? It's because we said we couldn't. And yeah, I think they're gonna giggle at how limiting we are, that we didn't trust an algorithm to give us our ability to do whatever we need to do, like Google Maps. Why didn't they realize they could do it with their own bodies, right? But no, we said we want our autonomy and our freedom, but we can have freedom and autonomy within that too.
Yeah, they might be envious of us, just because everything is. They might be like, wow, they live such a simple life, and we live in such a fascinating time of like we're pioneering in an inventive time right now that we are discovering so many new things at once that. In 400 years, everything might be so precise and efficient that there's not much room left to discover new things. And so I feel like we do live in a very incredible time right now that we're always playing with different things. Like you said, like, how can we live forever? Like the fact that that's not even a thing yet in 400 years, everyone's like, yeah, of course, like we all live forever. That's not a big deal. But it's interesting for sure.
Yeah, well, it just makes me think of something I'm working on right now. It's more like simplifying more than I think there's just so much data coming at us. And we're human beings supposed to be inputting this much and make maybe if just sometimes I think in a day it's just 3 good decisions in a day can really help drive a lot of interesting things instead of trying to do 500 things. So I sometimes feel it's like, gosh, there's going to be such evolvement coming up, but at the same point, I know I'm really working on also trying to really simplify and like slow it down and not look at too much, maybe very specific, but my interests, but not getting too clouded with too much data.
I find it almost impossible to make any predictions. It seems like humans are historically at making predictions. We're typically blinded by our modern day cultural and social norms. So trying to extrapolate even a couple of decades from now seems very difficult. So 500 years seems like something that no one is intelligent enough to say.
So that concludes thought experiment number 2. And so if we retrace our steps and where we've been, the first question is meant to be provocative. It's meant to create uncertainty. You're given a binary choice. Do you say yes or do you say no? And you have highly imperfect information. Right? You don't know. And so it creates a space of unknowing. Right? So you immediately imagine, can I still feel happy or sad or depressed? Can I still make my art? Can I still surf? Can I still do the highs and lows? Do I still have the autonomy to do this and that? And if you notice in most of your thought patterns, in that unknowing space, you filled the gap with assumptions. So the information was not present in the question, right? But you filled it in to say, I wouldn't because of the following reasons. And what you also did is you went into your mind, and so you had to deal with this complicated question. You went to your mind, you're like, hey mind, how do I understand reality? Some of you said, well, autonomy. Like autonomy is my model of reality. Like that's how I understand my existence. And if I don't have autonomy, I'm not quite sure why I exist. But autonomy is just simply a social, cultural construct, right? There's many different ways to understand reality. Some of you went to, I want to have an optimized life, or I want to create art. But the point is, as a human, you've developed an understanding of models of reality, and you just chose one. You could have chosen many, but you chose one and said, here's my model of reality, and here's how I'm going to solve this complicated question. And you gave your rationale for it. Question number 2 sits in stark contrast to that because it reminds us that we look back at previous generations and we're oftentimes pretty harsh in our judgment. We think they're pretty primitive with their decision making. We think that they're pretty antiquated. We can't understand why they didn't understand certain things. And if you go back further in time, it gets even more and more, right? And so by going to the 25th century, it's such a big jump in time that it almost makes us look like cavemen, right? If you look at just make a reasonable estimation of how things will progress, we're so far away from that, that they would look at us, all of our practices, and probably just say like, oh, that's cute. Homo sapiens are doing that. Now, it could be different, but it gives enough of a contrast where we become more humble in our opinions of ourselves, and we say like, maybe I'm not as confident as I was in my opinion. So the first two thought experiments are meant to contrast our knowing and our not knowing, and how we as humans, our superpower is in knowing. We learn things and we make decisive actions. But sometimes that knowing can walk us into a situation where not knowing is actually the more correct answer, but we're blinded to not knowing.